This is Dawn Barclay, Rockland's real estate novelist, and I'm an associate broker with Century 21 Full Service Realty. My job is to tell the world what's great in and around Rockland County. And today I'm here with Mitch Rosen, a self-taught artist with a passion for vivid realism, whose creative force is definitely making Rockland a more vibrant place to live. Thanks for joining me today, Mitch.
Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So you were telling me earlier that you have a totally different career prior to becoming a full-time artist, and that while you've been doing color pencil art for over 35 years, your work has only been available for the public to purchase since 2016. Do you want to tell my viewers what you were doing before that and about your journey from then to now?
Sure. I started with the police department in 1980 when I was 21 years old. And although I was a young man at that time, I was still at the point of my career. When I say my career, my art career, it started when I was 8 years old. So I would scribble around with colored pencils. My dad used to paint with oil paints, and I used to watch him paint, and I was very attracted to it, and he tried to get me convinced to paint, and I just wasn't comfortable using paints with the brushes. And then he threw me the Sunday New York Times one day, and on the inside cover of the Sunday New York Times back in the 60s was a color by number. And he handed me that newspaper with some pencils, and he says, "Try this." And that was the beginning of a love affair I had with color pencil. So since that point, I've been working with color pencil, and I've been doing it, as I said, from when I'm 8 years old. So over the years, those color pencil creations remained in my house. This was strictly based on a hobby, something that was enjoyable for me. And only up until 2016, a friend of mine came to the house. He saw all of these pictures on the wall, and he asked me where I bought them because he liked them. And I said I did them. He was very surprised and shocked because he didn't anticipate me, a retired cop, sitting there for hours and dabbling with pencil. But anyway, he thought they were brilliant, and I thought they were average. And he suggested I join this gallery. They had this competition. And I was a little bit reluctant to do that because my work has never even been seen by the public before, let alone go into a competition. Ultimately, I joined. I won the competition, and it created a whole new world for me. And from 2016, I started selling my work. I was reproducing it. I was making giclée prints, selling. I actually sold originals. And so from that point on, it's been a very interesting, uplifting career from dabbling when I was 8 years old with pencils. Now I'm actually selling work, and I have people very interested in purchasing it. And my police career ended in 2006. I was a first responder at 9/11, and being that I was involved with the art back then, not for sales, but just for my own personal reasons, I actually brought a little pocket camera with me when I worked on the at the Ground Zero location, because that was before cell phone cameras. And I took hundreds of photographs for the purpose of documenting the history. And approximately 20 years later, I created a piece which was titled The Search for Heroes. And that piece is now a part of the World Trade Center Memorial Museum's permanent collection.
Great. Now, that wasn't the first time that your two worlds collided, both police work and art. And I know that aside from A Search for Heroes, The Terminal Bar and Sudden Impact were also work that involved the police world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I like old photos and old things back from the 60s and 70s. So occasionally I surf the internet and I look for old photographs and old reference points of the city because I like to draw New York City street scenes. So I came across this old photograph from the 1970s, and it was in front of the Port Authority bus terminal. And there in front of the bus terminal was two Port Authority police officers, and I knew both of them. And I was a little taken aback by it because the sergeant that was portrayed in that picture was subsequently the inspector of the Port Authority Police, and he passed away in 9/11 at the World Trade Center. So what I did was I used that photograph to create a color pencil work, and I dedicated it to James Romito, and it's now on display in the Port Authority Police Academy in Jersey City.
Wow, fantastic. So you were saying, and it says on your website, that you focus on New York street scenes, specifically depicting somber moments and calm. Why those moments? What draws you to them?
Well, I like things that stand out. And when you're looking at a picture like Times Square, you anticipate chaos and confusion and massive people. And that's common. When you see that, that's very common. That's what you expect. But when you look up the street of Times Square and you see one person, that stands out in your mind as being a little different and unusual. So that seems to be what I'm drawn to. So I have a picture that I did from Coney Island and the Coney Island Boardwalk, and what I do is I go out and I take photographs of the location I want to capture. I'll take hundreds of photographs until I capture what I feel is going to suit my aim. And ultimately, I took a few photographs that ended up with one gentleman. He was riding his bike on the Coney Island Boardwalk, and he was the only one in the picture. And that was exactly what I wanted to capture, and that's what I created. And I did the same thing in Times Square. I went there at 6 o'clock in the morning after the New Year's Eve celebration, and there was one person sweeping up confetti. And again, that's what I wanted to capture, a single person on the street in a place where normally has hundreds of thousands of people walking the streets.
So it's kind of like juxtaposition between loneliness and crowds, or finding yourself in the masses.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's people that make connections with those pictures, because anybody that's been in Manhattan and has walked the streets on the off hours, they can relate to that.
Yeah. So you've also recently done a mural for Grub Restaurant in West Nyack. How did that come about?
Well, I don't do murals. I do color pencil work. And my daughter actually loves the food at Grub, and it's what's called Asian Fusion. I know the owner very well. My daughter knows her better than I do, but she eats there 5 times a week. And she opened up a new location, larger than her first, which was right across the street. And she asked my daughter if by chance she knew of anybody that can do a mural on the wall. And of course she said, oh, my father can do it. And I've never done a mural before in my life. I work with pencils. So for me to do a 15-foot mural would take me only about 6 years, because I'm working with pencils. But I ultimately came across an item I could use, which is called acrylic paint markers. So it's very similar to working with pencils, but out comes acrylic paint. And it makes it a lot easier to work with, and you can cover a lot more area. So I reluctantly agreed to do this mural, and it's on the wall in her restaurant, and it is 15 feet long. And it captures, I think, about a half a dozen countries that are blended together from these are locations that she had visited and loved, and she wanted to capture that on her wall.
I actually passed by Grub last night, and the lights were on, and I did see this mural, and it looked terrific. So have you always been in Rockland, and you call it home now? What keeps you here? What about the art scene appeals to you?
Well, I came to Rockland County when I was 14. I went to Nanuet High School, and I lived here for many years. And when I joined the police department, I moved back to Queens for a short period of time. And when I was old enough and I bought my first home, I ended up in New City, and that's where I still am. As far as the art world, there's a lot of very interesting places here. I was affiliated with an art gallery in Piermont. And in Nyack, and I'm also affiliated with a place in Manhattan and someplace in Orange County. So there's a lot going on here that's very interesting, and there's certainly a vast amount of opportunities for artists to look into here.
Fabulous. Now, how can people reach you to commission your work and see your work online?
Well, my website is mitchrosenart.com. And on that website, there's a contact page where you can actually send me a text message, email, or my phone number is on there. You can even call me up, and that's okay. Feel free to call me. I'm old school. I'd rather get a phone call than look at text messages. So feel free to call me, and even if you just have a vague question, which has nothing to do with purchasing, I have no reason not to talk to you. So feel free to call me.
Thank you, Mitch, for joining me today, and thanks everyone for watching. Again, this is Dawn Barclay, Associate Broker with Century 21 Full Service Realty, making sure the world knows what's great in and around Rockland County. If you know someone who wants to move here, give me a call. Thanks again.
Down the road, to the bridge over the river, to the city far from home. The toll booth takes my money, and the city takes my soul. And I see the river kissing the city in the dawn. She dances round his elbow, he's turning.